Nicole Bromley's book is called Breathe, Finding Freedom to Thrive in Relationships After Childhood Sexual Abuse. We're back discussing how survivors of sexual abuse can not only lead healthy, successful lives, but how they can trust, love, and feel safe in relationships where they once felt alone, hurt, and abused. And there is life after sexual abuse, and you are a living testimony to that.
It's true.
One of the things that I think we need to talk about is your relationship with the Lord, how important that was in the healing process, that you connect with the one who created you and have a meaningful relationship with him. How important was that in this whole process?
It was very important. For a long time, I pushed God away, blaming him for my pain and saying, where were you, God? Why didn't you stop this? So many things that I blamed him for. And I came to a point where I realized if God is our loving Father, he would want us to come to him with these questions rather than me running away and throwing these accusations back.
Right.
And so that's when I just started journaling and praying and dark in the night, I remember just writing these things out, being honest with God, but then beginning to feel his comfort and seeing how he's bringing people in my life to help me. And that's what really brought me to him, because I saw who he really was in the midst of my questions.
Another thing you and I were talking about during the break is, say you've been involved in a church, because we talked about it's important to be involved in a Bible-believing church where you can be surrounded by friends and family that you're safe, and yet we still hear incidents of sexual abuse taking place within the church. I mean, with youth pastors. I mean, obviously there's incredible youth pastors out there, and I'm sure this is a small percentage, but still, how important is it for the church to surround those survivors and those victims and to let them know that they are loved and can be nurtured back to health?
Yeah, we need churches that are real. We need genuine communities. A body of Christ needs to allow for pain and needs to allow for sin, and knowing we all fall short. I mean, Unfortunately, many in authority do, we fail. Our sin is brought into our ministries, and our brokenness reaches into the lives of others, sadly. I mean, that's our human fallen state. But we need to know that there's restoration. God can redeem anything, and I hope
even the abuser. That's one of the things we talked about, because you and I know that many times those that abuse have been abused. That is forgivable. That sin is forgivable, and we don't know their story. And as much as we want to surround the victim, and I know that's what you're focused on, you still believe that we should reach out to everyone, don't you?
I do, because I believe that God can do anything, and he can use anything. And that's my prayer, is that our churches, our Bible-believing churches, would be that community where people know they can come and be real, that they can share their stories, that there's a place for them, no matter what they've been through and no matter what they've done, that God can change the story in the course of their lives. And I think we need to be, as the body of Christ, be more welcoming to that.
What about coping mechanisms? What are some of those that you can share with us today?
Well, obviously unhealthy ones would be things like cutting and eating disorders and, sexual addictions, things like that. More healthy kind of coping, things that I did, like journaling, so important.
I like to write too. I mean, that's... So that was something in my book, Surrender All. I wrote a letter to the Lord when I was 20 years old. That is so profound to me today, to have that and look back. But writing your thoughts to the Lord and talking to him, did that really help you?
It did, and not only just with my relationship with the Lord, but working through my junk. I mean, it was like bringing reality. As I wrote, it was real, what had happened to me. It wasn't just this thing that I remembered. Now I was writing it down, and it kind of made it real for me, and it caused me to process it.
What are some of the stories you could share with us that some of the survivors that have told you their stories that had a profound impact on you, and you thought, wow, they went through something maybe even worse than what I went through? Can you share a couple of those stories?
Well, there's been so many stories I've heard. I wouldn't know where to begin. But, I think of people who told me their story for the first time years ago, began their healing journey after having broken the silence, worked through it, went through counseling, and now God's using them. One young lady is now over in Asia, rescuing victims of sex trafficking over there.
Think about that.
It's amazing.
Here she had been abused, and now God has taken the tragedy that happened in her life and what Satan meant for evil and turned it for good.
Exactly.
Amazing. Just like he did for you.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
There's so many stories.
The enemy
of that.
really messes up with, doesn't he? He underestimates God every time.
Yep.
Just when he thought he had you just where he wanted you, he could destroy your life and, mess up your destiny. God comes in and changes everything around.
Exactly. And I know the enemy will continue to do that with everything. That's his goal, is to tear us down and devour us. But God has a bigger plan, and I know that he'll redeem anything.
So now you're married.
I'm married.
And tell us a little bit about how you worked through the sexual abuse and then moved into marriage, because I know that's probably something that can really affect marriages if it hasn't been dealt with.
Definitely. I think that's where Satan really wants to tear us apart, is in our families. And for me, it's about communicating with my husband, and it's about him being Jesus to me, being gentle in the way that he cares for me, being compassionate, understanding. But the biggest thing, and in my book, he's the one that wrote the life letter at the end of the spouse chapter. And he talks about how his biggest role is to listen and to love, that he had to recognize that God is my healer. He can't fix me. Matt cannot fix me, even though he wants to be Mr. Fix-It. He can't be that in my heart.
And if a man or woman tries to be that, tries to be God, they're going to fall short.
They will. They'll fail. Yeah. Even in mentoring. I've learned that along the way too myself. I want to just love these little victims and help them, but you have to surrender it to the Lord, because you will fail people, and God has to be our healer. Our job is to listen compassionately, to speak truth, and to love. So
how did he feel about all the baggage that you were bringing into the marriage with your past, and knowing that you had been molested? Did he know your story when you guys met?
He did. We actually were set up. This was a couple years into my ministry, and so before he even met me, he saw my website and said, "Nicole, survivor of sexual abuse." So that was a little different than most people's
So it was all out there, right in the front. Yeah,
exactly. But, even though he knew that about me, I knew it was important to talk to him about it. And I remember being in the car one day and just driving for the purpose of sharing with him, how this affects my life, certain triggers that are in me, that I might respond to something that's not about him. It's just how I automatically respond to things.
So did that happen after you got married? Like he would experience a trigger? He'd be like, whoa.
Well, intimacy, obviously. We'd save sex for marriage, and so that was a whole new gamut for us and for me, and it was something where, he had to understand how I am and know that he had to be very gentle and talk to me about things. And if I freeze up, he has to recognize that,
That it's not about him.
Right.
That it's something God's working in you.
Exactly. And he has to come to me and not be pushed away by me. But no, Nicole, are you all right? Do you need to talk about something,
Well, that sounds like he's awesome.
He's pretty awesome. He's cute, too.
Maybe you should hold on to him.
I will.
The cute helps, too. That's for sure. Well, we're talking again with Nicole, the book, Breathe, Finding Freedom to Thrive in Relationships After Childhood Sexual Abuse. So what about mom, dad, brothers, and sisters? How do you move forward with other members of your family? That and more when we come back.